Chapter 7. Operation Glasgow Anomaly. Vatican, half a year ago. Your Excellency, the agent said, storming into the private chamber, sweat lining his brow. We've detected a signal from Scotland. The phenomena reader short-circuited, completely fried. The Pope's brow furrowed. Fried? That machine was designed to read the presence of dragons, fae, and even seraphim. Use the backup. We did, Your Excellency. It burned out the moment it was activated. The agent swallowed. The surge didn't just overpower it. It erased the calibration matrix. There's no residual data to even guess what hit it. Silence fell over the gilded chamber like a funeral shroud. Find a way to fix the readers. Reinforce them with triple-layer dampening spells and divine shielding if you must. The Pope sat back in his chair, fingers steepled. We must identify the source of that power and contact the hunters. 2 days later, Your Excellency, the agent burst through the doors once more. We finally managed a reading. 6 dampeners, reinforced and blessed. The machine held, barely. And? The Pope asked, voice low and tight. The result was 99.75. The Pope's eyes narrowed. That's powerful, but not unthinkable. The agent continued, his voice cracking. That was after 6 dampeners. We had to multiply the result up. The final strength reading is 99.75 million. The Pope's rosary slipped from his fingers. That's not possible, he whispered. The vampire lord of Moldova was only 94.2. We lost a cathedral's worth of warriors trying to kill him. He rose to his feet, pale. You're telling me this thing, this entity, could erase continents? We don't even know if it noticed us, the agent murmured. Evacuate any operatives near Glasgow. That zone is now classified. Divine Hazard Class Omega. No contact. Send in the elite team for a constant scan. Understood? Yes, Your Holiness. The agent saluted and sprinted from the room, barking orders into his comms. Current day. Glasgow Sector, Forbidden Zone. Sir? Agent Victor radioed, peering through binoculars from a hilltop. We've got a new signal flare. Small pulse. Strength reads at 53.51. Seems localized, not aggressive. His supervisor, Overseer Williams, tapped his earpiece. The Forbidden Zone hasn't spiked in 6 months. What's the location? Within central Glasgow, public area. Williams exhaled and stepped outside the underground monitoring hub. 10 minutes passed. He returned with a cold stare. Mobilize Recon Group 11. Discreet approach only. Do not engage under any circumstances. Sir. Yes, sir. Victor snapped to attention. Target behavior? Unknown. Assume divine tier capabilities. Williams paused. And, Agent? Yes? If it turns its head toward you, run. Glasgow. Forbidden Zone Perimeter. 13:40 p.m. The black van hummed softly as it rolled along the rain-dampened streets of Glasgow. Tinted windows, civilian plates, unassuming design. Just another delivery vehicle weaving through midday traffic. Inside, 5 men and women sat in tactical silence, dressed in plain clothes with military posture. The only sound was the soft beeping of the phenomena tracker on the center console, a green glow pulsing faster as they neared the signal. Last time the readings went past 20, we had to torch an entire abbey, muttered Briggs, the comms officer, sipping lukewarm coffee from a dented thermos. Yeah, and that was only a 17. 9 class possession. This one spiked at 53.5, added Marshall, checking his disguised tablet. Nothing's read higher than 14.2 since the 60S, and that was the Lisbon Rift. Maybe it's Jesus, joked Doyle from the back seat. Back for round 2. More like Satan's spawn forgot to mute their aura, Briggs smirked. You all laugh now, said Reeve, the squad leader. His tone was calm, but there was a subtle edge. But the Vatican's eyes are on us. Our job is recon only. No contact. No mistakes. We don't poke the bear. We just take its picture. Roger that, murmured the group almost in unison. The van turned slowly through Merchant City. The tracker's pulses became rapid, almost alarmed. "Target within 50 meters, said Marshall. "Still passive. Moving east. Hold on." The van slowed, blending with traffic as they rolled past a crowd near a corner store. Then they saw her. A girl, 16 at most, stepped out of the shop with a bottle of cola under her arm and a half-eaten bag of crisps in one hand. She wore gray cargo shorts, sneakers, and a black Naruto shirt that read, "That's my Nindo." Her platinum white hair, short and braided in Viking fashion, shimmered faintly even in the dull sun. A simple shoulder purse bounced at her side. That can't be it," Briggs said, blinking. "She's a bloody tourist." Phenomena tracker confirms. "It's her," Marshall whispered, swallowing. "Power density surrounding her is absurd. She's bleeding field energy just by breathing." The van pulled into a side street and parked. The team split without a word, each member slipping out the back in pairs, now dressed like office workers, street sweepers, and tourists. They followed her. From the shadows of alleyways, behind benches, across narrow streets, they watched her move with carefree ease. She smiled at street performers. She stopped to buy 2 graphic tees. She spent a full hour in a movie theater. Then she strolled into a gaming shop and spent another 20 minutes flipping through titles. "Target is currently browsing action RPGs," Doyle said, his voice low over the secure comm embedded in his ear. "Maybe she is Satan's kid." "No one likes those," Briggs whispered. "Can confirm. Bought a Soulsborne collection," Marshall added from across the plaza. "Definitely evil." A few minutes later, it happened. As she exited the shop, a teenage boy sprinted by and made a grab for her purse. The next moment was hard to describe. There was no shout, no struggle, just a sickening pop as the thief's arm was yanked backwards and out of its socket like a toy limb. The boy crumpled with a cry and fled, holding his twisted limb while the girl simply sighed, scolding him like an annoyed older sister. Okay, I take it back," Doyle whispered, wide-eyed from behind a bus stop. "Not disguised as an eldritch monster. Is an eldritch monster, wearing cute clothes." "She's headed west now," Reeve muttered, breath even. "Track her home. We report, we leave." Half an hour later, she arrived at a modest, semi-detached house with flower pots in the windows. "Residence confirmed," said Reeve into the comm. "Sending coordinates to HQ now." They watched as she opened the door and stepped inside. No explosions, no reality collapse, no lightning, just a girl returning home with snacks and a smile. Yet every person in the team knew they had just followed something that could wipe them from existence with a yawn. Mission complete. Falling back to van. Copy that. And someone tell Briggs to delete that Jesus joke from the logs. "Amen," whispered Doyle. Outside the forbidden residence, Glasgow, 14 p.m. The black van idled beneath a broken street lamp, its interior washed in a dim red glow. The 5 agents sat silently, until the air around them seemed to shift. The temperature dropped a fraction. The quiet hum of the city was still present, but something other now walked among them. Doyle peeked out the fogged window and immediately recoiled. Jesus Christ! That guy looks like a hyper-doped bodybuilder. "No kidding," Briggs muttered, adjusting the scanner. "That's the Vatican's hunter? I thought he'd be more priestly." The figure that approached was built like a slab of divine vengeance, 2.1 meters of scar-wrought muscle beneath a black cassock reinforced at the seams. A massive silver chain wrapped around his neck like it had been forged for a beast, and at its center hung a cross so dense it looked like it could cave in skulls. Dozens of charms, reliquaries, and holy water bottles clinked softly at his hips. His gloves were fingerless. His eyes were unblinking. He stepped into the van like a tank might tiptoe. "Buonasera," he said in a low, gravelly voice. "I am Inquisitor Matteo Drake. I was told there is a situation." His Italian accent made every syllable sound like it came from beneath a cathedral. Reeve offered his hand, which was promptly crushed in a handshake that could shatter walnut shells. "Sir, we've tracked the entity. Civilian form, appears female, high stability, no aggression. But the readings." He handed Mateo a tablet. The hunter's eyes scanned the numbers. For a moment, no words. Then, "These numbers are lies. Or miracles," Briggs muttered, not sure which one's worse. "Tell me everything," Mateo said as he folded himself into the reinforced passenger seat. It groaned under his weight. "Habits, behavior, affiliations. I do not like surprises." Doyle pulled up the logs. She shops. She eats. She watches anime, strong enough to dislocate a mugger's arm with one tug. Also, she lives with someone, older male. Human, we think. Mateo nodded once. An anchor, perhaps her creator, or handler. If not corrupted, he may yet be spared. "Orders from His Holiness?" asked Reeve. "The Pope prays," Mateo answered coldly. "I act." No one said anything after that. Reeve finally broke the silence. "Plan? The usual. Overwhelming force. Bless the perimeter. Position in 6 points. If it wakes up, we bind. If it resists, we end it." He rose from the seat and opened the van's rear. Inside lay a steel-lined rack of weapons. Blessed blades, silver-lined grenades, cruciform launchers, and something that looked suspiciously like a flamethrower with a cross embossed on its tank. "Luna Steel," he said, reading the name from their notes. "Let us see if your soul is yours alone. 22:43 p.m. House perimeter." The 6 agents moved like shadows in the night, their clothes mundane, their gear sacred. Mateo stood by the oak across the street, lighting a prayer candle and drawing a circle of salt around his feet. All 6 encircled the house from different angles. Windows shut. Lights out. One upstairs bedroom dimly lit. Inside slept a dragon in girl's skin, unaware that her presence had drawn the blade of a church older than most countries. The hunt had begun. Back garden, Scotland, nightfall. Joshua was startled awake by a surge of divine energy. A new prayer was coming through, unfamiliar, raw. It wasn't Gake's this time. The screen showed a young boy, battle-scarred and kneeling before a handmade stone altar. On it lay gold coins, gemstones, and the severed head of some monstrous wolf. "I pray to you, O Joshua Steele. Become my patron and lead me," the boy whispered, bowing so low his forehead touched the ground. Josh groaned, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Really? It's 3 in the damn morning." Still, he hit appear. With a rush of silver mist, he materialized in the boy's world, tall and imposing in his dragon form. Gleaming metallic scales shimmered in the moonlight, his jagged crown of horns catching the stars above. "I hear you, young one," Josh said, his voice steady but commanding. He made sure to enjoy the moment so he did not rush it. "State your name." The boy flinched, barely glancing up. "I am Ren. Just Ren, O Lord Steele." Josh's tail swished thoughtfully, humming like he was measuring the boy. "Why do you seek my guidance, Ren?" "I was saved in Hale's folk by your warlock gykes. My family didn't make it. I want the strength to protect others." Josh's great head lowered slightly. "A noble cause. You may just deserve it. Accept my condolences." With a gentle motion of his claw, the offerings vanished, converted silently into points back home. "Sleep under the moonlight, Ren. By morning, your path shall begin." He vanished in a shimmer. Back in Scotland, moments later, Josh returned to his living room in chaos. Princess, their loyal dog, whimpered behind a shattered couch. The air smelled of gunpowder. Outside, in the moonlit backyard, came the sound of gunfire. His heart dropped. He ran to the back door and froze. 6 dark figures encircled Luna, now in her dragon form. She crouched behind a shimmering shield, blood dripping from her side. Her breath was ragged. One of the attackers launched a grenade that exploded harmlessly against her barrier, but the strain was clear. "You fuckers leave my daughter alone," Josh bellowed, charging the largest man in sight, sword appearing in his grip. The hulking figure didn't even flinch. He swatted Josh aside with a brutal blow. Josh crashed to the ground, the breath knocked out of him. "Briggs! Handle the civilian!" barked the giant in priest's robes. One of the agents, Briggs, charged. But Josh's sword reacted faster than his thoughts. With an elegant arc, it slashed through the man. Yet Briggs didn't bleed. Instead, he dropped his weapon and muttered in a monotone, "I am Briggs Veland, Vatican Special Operations. Mission: subdue or eliminate anomaly. Orders: by papal directive." "Briggs, what the hell?" the priest snarled, dragging him back. Briggs continued to murmur, eyes unfocused, his mind stripped bare. "Dad, watch out. He's dangerous," Luna cried, blood streaming down her draconic arm as her shield pulsed weakly. "So am I," Josh growled out of pure fury. He fumbled for the bracelet. He did not know how to use his powers, but this was his ace. "Luna, get ready," he shouted. The silver deer, his summoned mount, erupted beneath him as if born from moonlight. It charged forward, leapt high, and passed through Luna's barrier as she shrank back into human form. Josh reached out, scooping her into his arms. Shots rang out, 2 grazed his side, but the deer didn't slow. Its hooves clattered over pavement as it bolted through the sleeping neighborhood. "Fuck! After them!" yelled the priest. Behind them, chaos. In front of them, the night stretched wide. Josh leaned in, shielding Luna with his body. "Run, Silver Stag! Run like hell!" Suburbs of Glasgow, 3:17 a.m. It began with a flash, a silver comet racing down the asphalt. From quiet bedroom windows and behind fluttering curtains, the neighborhood watched in shock as a glowing stag larger than any natural beast charged through the sleepy streets. Its antlers shimmered like moonlit blades. Riding it were 2 figures, a man in pajama shorts, barefoot, clinging tightly to a pale-haired girl bleeding from her arm. "Is that a deer?" someone whispered from a window. "What the hell's going on?" asked another. Children pressed faces to glass. A barking dog went silent, ears pinned. Behind them, tires screeched, rubber burned. A black van tore around a corner, engine howling like a beast. Its side door slid open with a clang, and a man leaned out, dressed in matte combat gear, aiming down sights. Bang, bang, bang. Sparks flew as bullets skipped off pavement. One grazed the stag's flank, but it didn't falter. It leapt over a parked car like it was made of feathers, carrying its passengers away from the gunfire. "There they go," someone yelled, filming with a shaky phone. The streetlights reflected off the antlers and turned the whole moment into something surreal, like a modern fairy tale crashing into reality. Josh ducked low, shielding Luna with his body. "Just hold on, sweetie. We're almost—" The edge of the forest loomed ahead, dark and tangled. With a final gallop, the silver stag vaulted over a fence, hooves kicking up gravel, and vanished into the thicket. The low branches snapped like dry bones under its momentum. The van skidded to a halt at the tree line. The tires screeched again as it tried to turn onto the grassy path, but the wheels spun uselessly, chewing mud. The forest was too dense, too wild. "Shit!" barked the commander. "Out! After them! Now!" The strike team bailed, fanning out into the trees, but it was futile. Between the underbrush, the steep inclines, and the total lack of visibility, they lost the trail within minutes. Radio signals crackled uselessly. Only the distant sound of rustling leaves and the echo of hoofbeats remained. Joshua urged the silver stag forward, and to his growing amazement, the creature did not slow, not even for a heartbeat. It galloped through the dense forest like a phantom, crystalline antlers cleaving through branches and underbrush with ease. Leaves and shards of bark rained down on them in a fragrant flurry of woodland debris. The ride was fierce, fast, and utterly surreal. After nearly 5 minutes of nonstop sprinting, Joshua gently pulled on the stag's mane. It came to an immediate halt, hooves sinking into soft moss. He slid off, barely catching his breath, before dropping to his knees, cradling Luna in his arms. "How bad is it, darling?" he asked, voice trembling, face pale. "Dad!" Luna clung to him tightly. "I'm fine, really. I'm a dragon, remember?" Healing and defense are kind of my thing. She gave a brave smile, then closed her eyes and began to sing a low, haunting melody in ancient Draconic. The forest seemed to listen. With each note, faint silver light pulsed from her chest. The bullet lodged in the stag's flank was pushed out with a soft clink, followed by another from Joshua's shoulder, one he hadn't even noticed. Then Luna's own arm closed up, flesh knitting itself back together in seconds. But as the last note left her lips, she wavered, her knees giving out. "Luna!" Josh caught her just in time. "I'm okay," she murmured, eyes fluttering. "Mana exhaustion. Just need a nap." Her voice faded into a soft breath as her body shimmered and shifted, growing, lengthening until she lay curled on the forest floor in her full Draconic form. The size of a small house. Her breathing was deep and even. Josh sat beside her, watching her with a father's quiet heartbreak. "You scared the hell out of me, kiddo." Then he turned to the silver stag, still standing nearby, majestic and still. "Thank you," he whispered, tears slipping down his cheek. The stag dipped its head low, almost reverently, before dissolving in a shimmer of light, returning to the bracelet on his left wrist with a faint metallic chime. Josh stood slowly, brushing leaves and dirt from his clothes. His shoulder throbbed, but he barely noticed. "There won't be a second time," he muttered, voice cold with resolve. His fingers clenched into fists, drawing blood from his palm. "Dad's gonna make sure of that." Chapter 8. An odd kind of punishment. While being chased, his inner warmth reached a point of boiling. His latent divine power, which was slowly gathering like a lake, was now a volcano, ready to burst. The moment the word left his lips, his body shattered, reduced to a glowing spray of particles. The system barely held him together, reconstructing him instantly as the silver dragon, reborn with far greater presence than before. He felt it immediately. Power. Pure. Incandescent. Immeasurable. He didn't waste a second. A note was written simply by his will midair and tied gently to Luna's neck. Then she was teleported with a thought to Geix's village sanctuary. "Watch over her for me, please." The realization of him controlling actual divine power would have been intoxicating, but his current mind was fogged by pure anger. Instead of acting out, he closed his eyes and was thinking hard how to actually fix this. Vatican City, underground command bunker. The first reports were absolutely insane. Inquisitor Mateo Drake, who had access to the highest information line along with 3 more genetically enhanced hunters, apparently acted on his own. He disregarded the order to only observe and decided to take on the anomaly his way. He even used his authority over the team in Glasgow and went on a crusade against the anomaly. "That fucker." Cardinal Julius slammed his hand on the table. "I want someone, anyone, to get a direct line to that team, now." The bunker was quiet, with agents working frantically to try and connect to the team, but something had likely fried their communicators. "Cardinal!" the agent next to the scanning machine yelled, his face going pale in real time. "What?" Julius turned toward him, a knot forming in his stomach. "We have another spike, currently soaring above 780. The man slid a dampener onto the machine as it started to sputter. "Sorry, we are passing 1,000. Now 6,000. He panicked and grabbed another dampener just in case, but the number finally began to settle. "What is the current number?" Julius asked, his heart beating in his throat. 8,620. God preserve us. The agent crossed himself. "Send an evac team. Now!" Julius roared at the communications agent. "Our men are in danger." The man wearing the headset looked up at him. "You think they are still alive?" The answer was not spoken out loud, but everyone felt that the question was appropriate considering the numbers. Daniel Reeve and his squad, under the current leadership of Inquisitor Drake, slowly followed the path up through the forest. Their headsets did not work since the dragon had used some strange sound-based ability, so they stayed in formation and walked carefully, relying on hand signals instead. Eleanor Nell Hartley, the only female member of their team, had a really bad feeling about this whole mission. She could not voice it, as she was several steps lower in rank than the bulky Inquisitor, but she kept a flashbang at the ready just in case. Most enemies her team faced, minor demons, werewolves, and more, were always aggressive and fought back. This white dragon had acted only defensively. She had looked scared and panicked. Still, orders were orders, and Nell was trained not to falter just because a monster had puppy eyes. Briggs wanted to make a joke about a wild hunt in a forest, but he would likely get a serious punishment if he alerted the targets. Instead, he focused on keeping a light foot on the forest floor, making as little sound as possible. The others did the same. Then light, a massive light, came from somewhere ahead. Reeve immediately raised a hand, signaling them to advance faster. They moved through the trees until they reached the edge of a meadow, where they quickly ducked behind the tree line. Every one of them froze at what they saw. What happened next was honestly absurd. From the light, a massive metallic dragon appeared. It stood easily 8 meters tall, its enormous body gleaming beneath the strange radiance. It did not roar. It did not attack. Instead, it simply summoned a piece of paper, which floated through the air before sticking itself to the small dragon's neck. Then the white dragon was gone. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. "We are so fucked," Doyle muttered as his rifle slowly slid down from his arms. Josh was deep in contemplation when his enhanced hearing picked up a muttered curse from the far side of the meadow. His first thought was to simply crush the humans. But he was a human. Well, even if not in body, his mind still was. And while his daughter had suffered and his home was a wreck, no one had died, not even his dog. He mentally counted to 10, allowing himself enough time to speak without his fury boiling over. He was going to be the bigger one here, both physically and metaphorically. "Indeed, you are fucked." He turned toward the team. "Just not in the way you think." He could see 5 people looking mighty angrily at the one who had spoken up, but their faces returned to him in less than a moment. "So, Vatican forces, huh?" Josh moved an arm, and all of their gear simply vanished, leaving them in nothing but their military outfits. A few confused sounds escaped the group, but he cared little. "Come here or else I go there. And trust me, I am not in the mood to be nice." Daniel looked at his team. They had nothing. No radio, no ammunition, not even a flashbang they could use to escape. If this monster wanted to kill them, he could do it in a heartbeat. He raised his hands and started to walk. Mateo Drake looked at him as if the man had committed a sacrilegious act, but even he had to admit that the situation was completely out of his grasp. He frowned and walked out as well, though he did not raise his hands like the others. If he had to die, he would face his enemy with a glare. The team stopped about 10 meters from the metallic-looking dragon. Its mismatched crown of horns gave it a menacing appearance, but its eyes were deeply human, which somehow made the entire situation even more absurd. "So, had the Vatican ordered you to kill my baby girl?" Josh asked, with as much restraint as he could muster. "No," Mateo spoke up. "This mission was my fault, and mine alone." The team looked at him with utter shock. "What?" Ethan asked in disbelief. "I thought they changed their point and sent you." "I simply decided that a strong entity like that was a threat, and acted on my own authority," the Inquisitor answered. Now that's interesting. Josh was actually surprised. The fact that he could tell the man wasn't lying was a massive boon. Being a demigod had its perks, it seemed. So what was the original order? "Sir," Daniel Reeve cleared his throat, "it was to observe only." "And you didn't think to question his order, I assume?" The guilty looks on all 5 others were visible, but none of them answered. "Report back to your higher-ups. Tell them what happened, exactly as it happened." His final words came out with such a mighty booming voice that the trees themselves seemed to tremble. "And report back with tools to fix my house. I will not call a company."
"No."
"You broke it. You fix it." He leaned closer, his enormous head lowering until his breath washed over the 6 humans. "Also, you will buy gifts for my daughter, now and for the next 10 years on her birthday. Got it?" The request from Joshua was so weird that Callum Briggs almost fell sideways in pure bafflement. "Say what?" "Did I stutter?" Josh asked, his gaze cold enough to freeze a lake over. "No, sir," Briggs muttered like a mouse. "Now, I will have a small talk with your higher-ups in Vatican City." And just like that, the massive dragon was gone, leaving behind only the sudden sound of air being sucked into the place where he had been standing. The 6 humans remained frozen in place. For several seconds, nobody said a word. Joshua used his current divine power to send a message to the Pope. A vision of sorts, where he PT'd down a few ground rules and mentioned that he was being extremely lenient, not erasing the entire Vatican City with a nuke like magic. In actuality, he was flying home fully invisible. He had almost forgotten about his new warlock amidst the chaos, but with a flick of his finger he sent the boy a few useful spells. Nothing absurd, just mediocre spells to get him started. Then he turned his attention homeward. Descending from the sky, Joshua landed in his human form just outside his house. As if answering an unspoken command, the garments gifted by Oberon flew from his bedroom window, fluttering through the air with otherworldly grace. They wrapped around him mid-step, a perfectly tailored coat, embroidered in ancient silver thread, a shirt softer than silk, boots that fit like old friends. Princess bolted from the ruined house and nuzzled his leg, whining softly.
"I know, my dear princess. I know,"
Joshua murmured, gently stroking her head.
"Don't worry. Things will be better."
Still, walking into the house was like stepping into a battlefield. Bullet holes riddled the walls. The front door hung off its hinges, and the living room. A jagged section was torn open, the aftermath of Luna's desperate escape. Splintered wood, shattered stone, and scorched fabric made the place look like it had survived a war. He approached the corner where his favorite potted rose sat, its leaves curled and bruised, one petal half torn. I'm not sure I can stay positive, Master." The rose wilted, its voice trembling. "No worries, Charmer," Josh whispered and poured a pulse of gentle magic into the soil. The effect was immediate. Color returned to the petals, the leaves perked up, and the rose stood tall once more. "I feel much better, and you, sir, look positively dashing," the rose chimed cheerfully, resuming its enchanted habit of excessive compliments. "Yeah," Josh smiled faintly, "you'll pull through." Miraculously, the gaming room had survived. Aside from a few stray bullet holes in the wall, everything was intact. His consoles, collectibles, and displays remained untouched. It felt like a small mercy. "Silver lining, I guess," he muttered, and quickly cast a triple-layered, self-sustaining barrier around the room. Whatever came next, this room would be safe. He grabbed the handle of the porch door, and the knob deformed in his palm. He looked baffled at the metal piece, now showing his fingerprints. A small scroll materialized in the air, gently unfurling as if it was waiting for this very moment. It was scrawled in elegant, almost lazy handwriting. "Your human body shattered from the divine power. This is the new one, forged with it. Be careful with your raw strength. What remains is still not exactly mortal. See." Josh stared at the message. Though it contained no laughter, something about the calligraphy, the timing, the sheer smugness of it all made him feel as though the ancient being had written it while chuckling. "Great," he muttered. "Now I have to live like Luna, pretending not to crush doorknobs every time I open them." Still, despite the destruction, the weight in his heart was lighter. Luna was safe. The threat had been answered, and his home, though scarred, stood tall again. One step at a time, he thought. One step at a time. The tavern room was cozy, warm, and more importantly, quiet. Gaich lay sprawled across a creaky wooden bed, snoring gently with one boot still on and the other dangling off the mattress. The scent of roasted meat from the inn's kitchen still lingered faintly in the air, mingling with old wood and pipe smoke. Crunch. The sound of splintering wood and bending metal jerked him awake. What in the 9 burning layers? Gaich sat up, bleary-eyed. Something massive shifted beside him. He turned, blinking at the sight of soft glowing scales and a silver-tufted horn nearly brushing the ceiling. A dragon's head. More specifically, A very familiar white dragon's head, now 3 times bigger than he remembered.
Luna?
He whispered in disbelief, watching the unconscious dragoness snore softly and take up not just his room, but most of the neighboring one as well. The shared wall between the rooms had collapsed under the sheer volume of her curled-up body. A faint shimmer of magic lingered in the air, and a glowing note appeared in midair above her. "Look out for my daughter for a bit, Josh." Gase groaned and slapped his forehead. "Gods! How am I supposed to explain this?" Footsteps echoed from downstairs, boots on wood, armor clanking. Voices rose in alarm. "Did you feel that tremor? Something hit the building. Check upstairs, fast. Might be a monster." Gakes's face paled. "Oh no. No, 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 no." He scrambled to the hallway just as a group of 6 armed adventurers charged up the stairs, swords and spells at the ready. The moment they saw the collapsed doorway and the immense white bulk within, weapons raised instantly. "Stand down!" Gakes shouted, throwing himself in front of the door like a very nervous, underpaid bouncer. "What is that thing?" barked the frontliner, gripping his enchanted axe tightly. "Listen to me carefully," Gakes said, holding up both hands. "That is Luna. She is not a threat unless you make her one. She's a dragon." "She's also a teenager, exhausted, and very much asleep," Gaiax hissed. "And more importantly, her dad sent her here." One of the adventurers snorted. "What kind of dragon's dad do you think we should be scared of?" Gaiax stared at him flatly. "The kind who could erase a continent by sneezing. You so much as scratch her, and we'll all be a fine mist hovering over the ruins of this kingdom." The group froze. "You're joking, right?" one of them muttered, already taking a half-step back. Gakes crossed his arms. "Do I look like I'm in the mood to joke?" There was a long, tense pause. Then, with synchronized awkwardness, the adventurers sheathed their weapons and began backing down the hall. "We, hope she sleeps well," one of them offered. "We'll keep the ale warm," said another. Gaiax sighed and leaned back against the doorframe. "Yeah, I'll need it." From inside the room, Luna snorted in her sleep and shifted, knocking a support beam loose with her tail. Gakes watched a wooden beam fall with a soft clunk. Maybe a lot of it. The repairs had cost Gaiax dearly. His coin pouch was left emaciated, and his pride slightly bruised from the many awkward apologies he'd offered to inn staff, builders, and one very angry tavern maid whose broom had perished in the chaos. As he stepped out of the now patched-up building, Luna walked beside him in her human form. She looked every bit the curious teen, platinum hair in a braided style, her oversized anime shirt, sporting bold lettering, and a wide-eyed character's head, smiling far too cheerfully for Gakes's comfort. "Did father send me here?" she asked quietly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "He did." Gakes nodded, exhaling through his nose. "Though for the life of me I cannot fathom why. Still, it's not an issue. Money is just money. It's replaceable. Are you hurt?" "Not anymore," she mumbled, casting her eyes down and nudging a loose pebble with her sneaker. The pebble shot off with a crack, breaking the sound barrier and disappearing over the rooftops. Gakes's brow twitched. Did something happen? Luna hesitated. She thought briefly of her father's comet-like landing, the bullets, the blood, and the roar that had shaken the earth. But instead of saying all that, she offered a small smile. "There was a fight. Dad just didn't want me in the middle of it. That's all." "I see," Gakes murmured, trying not to imagine a divine clash. He failed. His knees went weak, just picturing it. "That shirt, though, it's unique. Why is there a grinning severed head on it? And what's that writing? I can't read it." Luna chuckled. "It's not severed. It's just a design. Anime stuff. I'll explain it someday." She shook her head with a grin. "Let's just hope father's okay." "I'd be more surprised if someone could truly mess with him," Gakes replied with a confident smile. "He probably taught whoever crossed him a lesson they'll remember in their next 10 lifetimes. Besides, I still have my magic, his blessing. If something had happened to him, I'd have lost it by now." Luna's smile returned, warmer this time. He really is the best dad ever. Gakes reached out and gently patted her head as they strolled through the sunlit town. And he's lucky to have a lovely daughter like you, Luna. She blushed faintly but said nothing, enjoying the breeze and the gentle bustle around them. Gakes even bought her a handful of bright red apples from a nearby stall, handing them over with a wink. Back on Earth, Joshua found the only can of beer what was not torn open due to bullets from his ruined fridge and walked outside. "She is having a good time," he murmured. Watching the scene unfold through the perfect pier spell, he smiled to himself and closed the window with a flick. Let's not interrupt. She needed a bit of sightseeing anyway. He sat down on the doorstep of his ruined house, gently stroking Princess's soft ears as she rested her head on his knee. The dog let out a contented bark, quiet and tail wagging. Chapter 9. Repairs and Gifts. Joshua sat quietly on the doorstep of his ruined home, his feet brushing against scattered leaves and broken bricks. The morning sun filtered through the tree in the back garden. Princess, loyal and ever watchful, rested beside him, her head on his knee. He scratched behind her ears absent-mindedly, his eyes scanning the horizon with tired patience. The house behind him was still a mess. Scorched wood, shattered windows, silver or blessed bullet fragments embedded in the furniture, and the broken frame of the living room wall, where his daughter had been cornered. Even the rose in its cracked pot, though slowly healing, looked weary. Then, tires groaned over asphalt. The familiar black van rolled to a stop across the road. Its matte exterior still bore some dirt and scratches from last night's chase through the forest. The door opened, and the same team from the assault emerged, no longer clad for war, but looking very much like soldiers, with their shoulders stiff and expressions guarded. Josh didn't stand up. He simply raised an eyebrow, and with a voice like steel wrapped in tired scorn said, "I hope you brought brooms, paintbrushes, and hammers." The group froze mid-step, unsure how to respond. Mateo opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Joshua leaned back on his palms. "Look on the bright side. It's not raining." The door to the van slowly opened, and tools started to pour out. All brand new, right from the hardware store. A truck also arrived behind it, parking in the driveway between Josh's house and his neighbor's. Doyle jumped out of the truck and opened the back, revealing cement sacks and bricks, along with electrical wires and more. Looks like they had done their homework during the night, as none of them looked like they had slept a wink. Even Eleanor had to wipe her eyes with a bit of water before getting to work. "We brought what was needed," Mateo said, his voice subdued. "And we're ready to make amends." Joshua gave a single nod, slow and deliberate. "Good. You break it, you fix it. And maybe, just maybe, I'll consider not turning Vatican City into an archaeological exhibit." Princess let out a low, unimpressed bark. No one laughed. "Start with the gate," Josh added. "It's hanging off one hinge, kind of like your whole damn operation." Doyle pushed a broken table leg with a broom, muttering, "I was trained to neutralize vampires, not sweep up IKEA corpses." Briggs hauled shattered drywall into a heap and groaned at Doyle. "How about you shut up for once and just do what you're told?" Reeve eyed the mint green wallpaper in the hallway as he spackled a bullet hole. "This place had vibes before we leveled it. Shame." Mateo worked in absolute silence, removing broken bricks and repairing the section of wall that had been crushed. Thankfully, only a few electrical wires needed to be fixed, as most of the bullets had missed them inside the walls. Eleanor, who was used to disarming bombs, had little to no trouble working on the house's wiring. She tested each outlet and built-in line carefully, making sure nothing had been damaged beyond repair. Then came the sound of sandals on gravel. They turned to see Josh approaching, 2 plastic shopping bags in hand. "It's past noon," he said calmly. "Let's take a break." From the bags, he pulled out 7 cold bottles of water and a neat pile of packed Chinese takeaway boxes. The team stared at him, baffled. "You're giving us lunch?" Doyle blinked. "You expected I'd starve you?" Josh asked, setting the boxes down on an untouched bit of the porch. "Well, Reeve scratched the back of his head, but he didn't seem to have anything concrete to say. Look, I know we started off on the wrong foot. No one got seriously hurt. And Mateo here is going to have a special job in the following year to pay for his sin. Josh patted the bulky man on the shoulder, not holding back his strength. Each tap nearly knocked the priest over. The others nodded slowly, some a bit more sheepish than others. Also, Josh added, cracking open his own bottle of water, just so you know, my daughter's away for now in another realm, but she will need proper apologies too. Something thoughtful, possibly wrapped, with a ribbon. The 5 agents and the Inquisitor all nodded. The next morning, they started with shopping. The strike team stood awkwardly near the mall's central fountain, each holding some form of awkwardly gift-wrapped present. Doyle had 4 massive bags full of anime-themed stuff, remembering Luna's fascination with the genre. Reeve had gone into shops meant for women and simply asked what young teenage girls liked. He didn't hesitate to buy everything from beauty products to accessories, leaving the store with far more bags than he had originally intended. Eleanor decided to go all in on the sweet side and bought so many confectionaries that she could barely hold them all. They all nodded along, looking at the growing pile of gifts. This should likely make her feel better, Briggs said with a nod. Except, came Victor's voice, suddenly somber, I broke her heart. The team turned. Victor was walking toward them with 2 massive, heavy-duty bags. One was marked Glasgow High-End Tech, the other Game Haven. His expression was grim, but determined. I saw her room, he said, before I tossed that grenade. Anime posters, comics, and a PC setup that could rival my own. He held up a receipt that looked more like a hospital bill. So, I'm rebuilding it, or at least trying to. Victor, Doyle finally muttered. That's the most beautiful apology I've ever seen. Victor sat down, exhausted. I'm not asking her to forgive me. I'm just trying to make the damage right. Eleanor folded her arms and nodded once in approval. Well done, soldier. As Josh stepped outside to see the team once again lined up, they each stepped forward and placed their offerings one by one on a carefully repaired porch table. Then Victor stepped up last, his tech setup displayed like a shrine. Josh stared at it. Did you guys rob the whole mall? He chuckled. Victor scratched the back of his neck. Nah, just felt she deserved better than sparkly socks and anime-themed lip balm. He grinned at the others. Josh gave a slow nod. She'll love it, especially the monitor. I'll make sure she knows who it came from. Victor looked down. Thanks, and tell her I'm sorry. You'll get your chance, Josh said, then smirked faintly. But first, get that lava lamp plugged in. She might like it too. Gakes and Luna had spent a surprisingly pleasant day together. For Luna, it was a carefree outing, an opportunity to explore, taste new foods, and enjoy the sights of a foreign realm. For Gakes, it was nerve-wracking. After all, the cheerful young girl skipping beside him was none other than the daughter of his patron, Joshua Steele, himself. A literal god. Still, as the hours passed and Luna's radiant personality shone through, Gakes found himself relaxing. She was kind, playful, and utterly disarming. Whether they passed by merchants, adventurers, or passers-by, everyone seemed to catch her infectious joy. She brightened the day like sunlight cutting through a misty morning. Then, without warning, a deep voice echoed in Gaius' mind. Thanks for looking after her, Gakes. Remind me to send you a bonus. Say your goodbyes. She's coming back now. The voice was unmistakable. Joshua Steele. Gaius turned to Luna, his expression soft. It seems your father is calling. Stay safe, Miss Luna. You too, Gakes, she said brightly, giving him a little wave. Then she vanished in a swirl of shimmering silver mist. Luna reappeared in what was once the living room of their home. Now it looked like a construction zone at the end of a long day. The furniture was outside, most of it beyond repair. The floor was freshly mopped, the walls newly painted, and the air held the scent of sawdust and lemon cleaner. Oh, man, she groaned, staring at the empty space. Luna, come outside. There are a few people here who want to speak with you. came Josh's voice from the patio. Curious, Luna stepped out. Her first instinct was to raise a shield. The group gathered in the backyard was unmistakably the same team that had attacked her days ago. But something was different this time. Their weapons were gone, their expressions sheepish and guilty, and behind them stood a massive, mismatched pile of gifts. "Father?" Luna asked cautiously. "What happened while I was gone?" Josh chuckled. "I had a conversation with their boss. Let's just say terms were negotiated. They're here to fix what they broke and to apologize." "We are deeply sorry, Princess Luna," Victor said, bowing so low it looked painful. Luna leaned close to her father, whispering, "I'm not a princess." Josh grinned. "Just roll with it. Today, you are a princess." At his side, Princess the dog let out a bark that somehow sounded like a scoff. Josh smirked. "Yes, yes, you'll always be my princess. One by one, the team stepped forward to offer their apologies and gifts. There were awkward glances, stammered words, and a general air of nervous reverence. Finally, Mateo stepped forward. He held out a plain envelope containing a thick stack of gift cards. "I am not good at shopping," he said with a stiff, almost pained expression. "Please buy whatever pleases you." He hesitated, then gave a rigid bow, refusing to meet her eyes. "I am sorry." Luna blinked, surprised. She took the envelope gently. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer now. Josh rested a hand on her shoulder and nodded toward the group. "Not bad, huh?" She smiled. "Just a little." "Yeah, not bad." It took an entire week to fully restore the house. 7 long days of hammering, painting, assembling, and apologizing. Yet, by the time they were finished, the place looked better than it ever had. A brand new living room set replaced the one destroyed in the raid. A plush gray sectional sofa, a glass coffee table with rounded edges, and a sleek entertainment unit that held a freshly installed 5.1 surround sound system. Briggs, surprisingly, had taken a genuine liking to the setup process. Normally accustomed to breaking down doors or scanning rooftops for threats, he found a strange peace in setting up speakers and calibrating audio levels. It was satisfying. Luna's bedroom had undergone a full transformation. Soft pastel curtains framed her window now, chosen carefully by Eleanor to match a new set of bedsheets adorned with crescent moons and tiny foxes. Victor, meanwhile, took the PC situation personally. He spent hours recovering files from Luna's fried hard drive, mumbling curses at corrupted sectors like a man defusing a bomb. But to his amazement, much of it was salvageable, especially her music folder. Scanning through it, he felt a twinge of surprise. Nearly every track mirrored his own playlists. Lo-fi instrumentals, orchestral covers of anime openings, and even a few rare indie synthwave gems. It was uncanny. "She's got taste," he muttered to himself, a smirk tugging at his lips. As the days passed, something shifted in the team. The usual gruffness and military stoicism gave way to small laughs and shared snacks during breaks. They joked while painting walls, argued over the best color for the throw pillows, and even helped Josh with replanting the flower bed out front. It was the first mission in years where they weren't burning something down or closing a coffin. By the end of the week, they stood back and looked at their work with quiet pride. "It's weird," Doyle had muttered, tossing a used paint roller into a bin. "Doing something that stays, you know?" Nods followed. Soon after a brief goodbye, they left, leaving the place with actual smiles. Ren, the second follower of Josh, had overestimated himself and received a serious wound across his chest. Not only that, but he had also passed out from blood loss. Waking up in a treehouse was not how he expected the afterlife to look. "Wait, I'm alive?" He tried to sit up, only for his chest to blaze with heat and pain. "Shit!" A female voice came from nearby, followed by hurried footsteps as someone rushed inside. "You tore your stitches, idiot!" The owner of the voice was a lovely pale elf, her skin white as parchment and her hair the color of golden wheat. She immediately knelt beside him, checking the bandages with an annoyed expression. "I'm sorry," Ren groaned as he felt warm blood soaking into the bandages. Is there no healer or alchemist around? No, only I live here, and I'm a ranger. You're lucky I had a needle and thread. See, could you get my copper offering bowl and the 2 monster cores I had? Ren asked carefully. The elf paused. Wait, that was an offering bowl? Are you a priest or a warlock? Her eyes suddenly became much less welcoming. Ren swallowed. I am a warlock, with a good patron. The elf looked disgusted and stopped her hands. I have never heard of any good warlock patrons. It was clear from the way she acted that she had a bad history with warlocks. Still, after a moment of hesitation, she retrieved his 2 small cores and the copper bowl. Ren carefully took the bowl and placed the 2 cores inside. Then he prayed. The moment his prayer ended, the stones began to glow. Their solid forms dissolved into brilliant light, sinking into the bowl before flowing into Ren. Suddenly, the burning pain in his chest vanished. Instead, a pleasant coolness spread through his body. Ren blinked. He felt great. The exhaustion, the weakness, even the lingering ache from his wounds seemed to have disappeared. He sat up properly and slowly removed the bandages, expecting to see an ugly, half-healed wound. Instead, there was a line of silver scales where the massive wound had been. His hand ran along them. They felt soft beneath his fingers, yet there was something remarkably solid beneath their smooth surface. For some reason, he could tell instinctively that these scales would stop a sword. Thank you, Lord Steel. He immediately bowed his head and prayed again. The elf stood frozen beside him, staring at the silver scales. She was clearly shocked by the instant divine intervention, but she was not convinced. Luna raised a brow as the car rumbled along yet another gravel road, the landscape around them growing more barren with each passing minute. The tall grass swayed lazily in the breeze, and a distant flock of birds scattered at the engine's approach. Dad, she said at last, arms folded, we've been driving for an hour. Can you please tell me why we're in the middle of nowhere? Josh just smiled, eyes on the narrow dirt path ahead. It wouldn't be a surprise if I told you, would it? You said that an hour ago, she groaned, flopping back in her seat with dramatic flair. The car eventually rolled to a stop at the edge of a secluded meadow. Josh stepped out and stretched, then walked a good distance away from the vehicle, glancing up at the open sky. All right, he called over his shoulder. You might want to step back. Wait, what? With a flash of light and a pulse of divine energy, Josh shifted. 1 second he was a man in casual hiking clothes. The next, a towering silver dragon with radiant eyes and wings that shimmered like polished chrome. He grinned. Well, as much as a dragon could. Surprise! Luna's jaw dropped. You can transform here too? She squealed in delight, immediately bursting into her own draconic form. Her lithe, snowy body practically danced with excitement as she tackled him into a playful hug. You didn't tell me? Side effect, Josh chuckled, wrapping one clawed foreleg gently around her. I might have overdone it with the divine energy and nuked my human body. So I got an upgrade. I love it, she sang in that uniquely harmonic tone only her kind of dragons possessed as she sifted. The sound reverberated across the valley. They spent the next hour soaring through the clouds, looping around one another, playing high-speed games of tag and hide-and-seek through the sky, tails weaving like ribbons of silver and white against the azure backdrop. Down below, however, in a copse of trees near the hillside, a lone hiker had just been tying his bootlaces when he caught sight of them. He froze. He blinked. He then proceeded to very quietly, very urgently, wet himself. Mouth agape, he watched as 2 colossal dragons flew overhead, laughing to themselves. I need to stop drinking, he whispered to the wind, backing slowly into the bushes as though pretending he never existed. Meanwhile, high above, Luna giggled. Do you think we scared any deer? Josh glanced down briefly, a mischievous glint in his eye. Something like that. And together, the 2 dragons soared back toward home, leaving a trail of silver mist and one emotionally scarred hiker behind. Chapter 10. Dragon Goes to College. A day later, a peculiar envelope arrived in the mail unmarked, thick, and unusually heavy. Joshua knew immediately what it was. He set down his coffee, broke the wax seal, and opened the folded contents with the care of someone unwrapping a loaded secret. Inside were official-looking documents, all printed on watermarked paper and embossed with government insignia. Birth certificate, residency records, school transcripts, everything a regular teenager would need to exist on paper. Luna Steele, he read aloud with a quiet smile. 16 years old, born in Glasgow, the 4th of December 2009, full British citizenship. Custody granted to the father, Joshua Steele, following the passing of the divorced Elaine Ashcroft, mother of Luna. It was all perfectly fabricated and perfectly legal. The Vatican had pulled strings Joshua requested, weaving Luna into the very fabric of society's databases. As far as any government system or school administrator was concerned, Luna had always been here. He walked into the living room where Luna sat with her legs curled up, watching a nature documentary and lazily munching on crisps. "Hey, kiddo," he said, placing the papers on the table with a soft tap. "Remember when you said you wanted to make some friends?" She perked up immediately, tilting her head like an intrigued puppy. "Yeah? Well, I made that happen," he said with a grin. "I enrolled you in college." "No way!" Luna lunged forward, snatching up the papers like they were a winning lottery ticket. Her golden eyes scanned the pages, widening with every new line. "Wait, this is real? This is real. This is real." Joshua chuckled, all the way down to the sad passing of a divorced mother. "Fully legit. You start this September." Luna practically vibrated with energy. "How did you even—" "Dad found a way," he said, casually sipping his coffee like he hadn't just strong-armed an international intelligence agency into crafting a legal identity from thin air. "Now take that gift card you gotten from Inquisitor Mateo and go nuts. Backpack, clothes, notebooks, whatever you need." She stared at him for a moment, then lunged forward and hugged him with full draconic strength, ribs creaking, air pushed from his lungs, but not painfully thanks to his Josh's new body. It was a rare moment when she didn't have to hold back. "Thanks, Dad," she whispered into his shoulder. He grinned despite the pressure. "Just remember to hold back when hugging your classmates, all right? Promise," she said, laughing into his chest. The report from Geixtahinor to the Warlock headquarters had made quite a splash. By now, he had documented enough evidence for a full examination of the facts, and the newest books would list Joshua Steele as a metallic dragon god with a lawful good standing. It would still take half a year for the first copies to leave the printing presses and be sent out to the larger libraries. But there were always a few people who sent out private notes whenever something truly significant came to light. As such, Viscount Garandil received a small letter, flown directly to his manor by a white raven. "Kra, letter from the capital, Kra." The white raven hopped onto his table and waited patiently. "Interesting. This must be important if they sent you." The nobleman pulled a sweet snack from a glass jar and held it out to the bird. The raven happily dropped the letter onto the table before taking the treat and flying off. Viscount Garandil watched it disappear through the open window before turning High's attention to the letter. Whatever was inside had clearly been deemed important enough to warrant the use of one of the capital's messenger ravens. Slavery, no matter how forbidden it was something the rich and influential always managed to find ways around. Jakul Garandil was just one such person. He used something worse than collars and whips. A curse-bound contract that forbade the slave from telling anyone they were enslaved while magically binding them into service. Piur was a small blue kobold, the smallest of his clutch. He had been captured when he was only 6 days old. Ever since, he had served under a human as nothing more than a pet. His scales were weak and soft, his claws short, and his voice so high-pitched that others could easily mistake him for a female. Yet all of that was nothing compared to the fact that he could never leave. Now he had been called into a decorated room with an altar. At first, he thought he was going to be the sacrifice. It would have been nicer to finally leave this disgraceful service. Any kobold who did not serve a dragon was a disgrace after all. "Here," Jakul tossed him a satchel. "You will use the items inside on that altar and become a warlock. Of course, this only means that I will have better uses for you." The noble smirked. He knew that the first few warlocks to make a contract with an entity were usually the strongest. If he wanted a slave with a truly powerful set of skills, he had to act fast. As far as he knew, only Guy Xtahinor had made a contract with Joshua Steele so far. The printed books would not come out for another few months, but Jakul did not want to risk someone else getting there first. "Put the items on the altar and pray as instructed on the paper," he ordered the small kobold. "As master wishes." Pior sighed and approached the altar. Josh was mid-fight against Luna in a video game when his system pinged, displaying a brand new golden window. "No, no, no, shit." He sighed as Luna took advantage of his sudden distraction and pushed him straight off the map. "Game!" Luna shouted, along with the in-game announcer. "Kirby is the best!" Yeah. Josh waved her off as he turned his attention to the other world. What he saw nearly made him melt. A long, drawn-out awe escaped his mouth as he stared at the tiny blue kobold standing before the altar. Dressed in little pants and a shirt, the creature was simply too adorable. Josh cleared his throat and turned his attention toward the altar. It was covered with gems and other offerings, along with a glowing orb in the center. Since the room was far too small for him to physically appear, he simply projected his voice directly into the mind of the little kobold. "I hear you, little one," he said in a majestic voice. "Why do you wish to have my powers?" The kobold let out a fearful squeak and shrank even further into himself. Lord Steele, I pure wish to be useful and strong." The voice of the small lizard humanoid was absolutely adorable, sounding like a mix between a young child and a squeaky toy. "I was born as the runt of my clutch. Please, grant me your blessing." Josh was just about to reach for the prepared items he kept in a box for occasions like this when he suddenly stopped. His eyes narrowed. There was something he could see that a human could not. A black chain was wrapped around the tiny kobold's heart. Josh followed the chain with his gaze. It stretched beyond the room and into another part of the building, where he saw a man sitting comfortably and drinking wine, apparently waiting expectantly for the ritual to finish. Josh examined the chain more closely. It was a binding curse. He considered it for a moment before speaking. "I shall grant you some of my powers, but you must keep secret what I am about to tell you. I have sensed that you are bound to another person." At his words, the kobold immediately began to shiver. He was probably expecting punishment. "My granted powers will help you, yes. But that chain is something I will only remove if you show me your true faith." "You can remove it?" The kobold's thoughts were so loud that Josh almost winced. "Yes." The tiny kobold stared at the altar in disbelief. "Right now, I feel no faith from you. You have been taught to obey, not to believe. If you start to act like a true warlock of mine, I will set you free." End quote. Josh then sent the kobold a mental image of himself. A majestic metallic dragon, vast enough to blot out the sky, his scales gleaming like forged silver beneath divine light. The faith meter jumped so hard that Josh actually blinked. The tiny kobold had practically transformed into a zealot on the spot. Josh stared at the sudden surge for a moment, before deciding not to question it. With that, he granted Pior 2 spells, Ice Lance, and Strangling Roots. Josh monitored his warlocks every now and then. Gaix was on some kind of long journey across the sea, so watching him quickly became boring. Ren was only starting to learn how to use his blessings properly, and the young man had recently joined a dungeon delving party. That was actually quite interesting. As for his newest warlock, the master of the small kobold was a noble who had bought quite a lot of power-boosting medicines and elixirs to strengthen the weak Pior. Of course, this came with a whole lot of pain. Josh wanted to help, but the kobold remained focused, gritting his tiny teeth through every dose. His faith meter seemed to be growing by the day. At this rate, Pior would surpass Gaius in only a week if the speed of his growth did not decrease. Summer ended with a steady rain, which was hardly surprising, considering rain was the neutral weather of this island nation. Luna had packed everything, and she jumped into the car with a grin even the Cheshire Cat would envy. "We're going to make another stop," Josh noted as he pulled out of the driveway. "I wondered why we had to get ready this soon." Luna nodded. "So, what is it?" "We're going to pick up your personal security." "My what?" Luna looked at Joshua as if he had suddenly grown a second head. "Remember when I told you that Inquisitor Mateo would have a new job this year? He's going to go with you to college." Josh smirked. "No, he's going to ruin everything. Also, I'll be the weird rich girl with a bodyguard? Absolutely not." Luna crossed her arms firmly. "Wait until you see what I came up with. Only then make your decision." "Fine," Luna sighed. She knew her father wouldn't deliberately mess up her college experience, so she held back her complaints. 10 minutes later, the car stopped in front of a church. A young but bulky boy in a school uniform walked out. He wore round glasses that made him look like a strange mix between a sports lover and a nerd. The boy quietly walked over to the car, opened the back door, and sat down. "So, you like your uniform?" Josh asked with a smirk, leaning back. "Who is this?" Luna asked. "I am Mateo Drake," the boy said in a completely dead tone. "No way." Luna stared at him for a few seconds before suddenly bursting into laughter. She laughed so hard that she had to hold her sides. "Okay, I see now. This is the only time I'm picking him up," Josh noted. "I only wanted to see your reaction. He's going to the same classes as you, so if anything gets out of hand, he can act with human strength." Josh paused. "Well, Vatican power-juiced human strength, but you get what I planned." Luna simply nodded. Mateo, meanwhile, quietly accepted his year-long punishment of having to be a teenager. In all honesty, he had never attended a normal school. He had been raised in Vatican City from the age of 5, and all of his friends had been similar test subjects. School was an experience he had only ever heard about from others. With a quiet huff, Mateo leaned against the window and watched the buildings pass by. The car eventually turned onto Flemington Street, and the large campus of Glasgow Kelvin College came into view. Luna practically pressed her face against the window. "There it is." Josh chuckled as he pulled into the area near the entrance. "Yep, that's your school for the next few years." The moment the car stopped, Luna practically launched herself out of the door. She grabbed her bag and rushed toward the college entrance, her bright smile impossible to miss as she looked around at the building, the students, and everything waiting ahead of her. Josh watched her go with a smile of his own. He petted his hand and activated the small ring he had received from Puck. The ring shimmered faintly as it captured Luna's excited expression and the way she practically bounced toward the entrance. "What a thoughtful gift," Josh muttered, glancing at the ring. "Definitely the best thing given to me." Behind him, Mateo finally stepped out of the car. He adjusted his school uniform, straightened his round glasses, and stared at the college entrance, then began walking toward it. There was no excitement in his expression. He walked with the grim, resigned posture of a man on his way to his own execution. Josh watched him for a moment. "You know, you could try looking a little happier." "I have been assigned a year of pretending to be a normal teenager," Mateo continued walking. "It is my punishment." Josh snorted. "You're going to love it." "I highly doubt that." Ahead of them, Luna turned around and waved both arms. "Come on!" Mateo sighed, then continued his march toward the college, looking every bit like a death row inmate. Luna had one massive advantage compared to the other students. Well, other than being a literal dragon with enough strength to stop a speeding truck. She was a booster-type dragon, which meant she could enhance herself in a variety of ways. Her memory, concentration, intelligence, reaction speed, practically anything she wanted could be pushed far beyond what a normal human was capable of. She quickly discovered that this made studying almost unfair. If she wanted to, she could boost herself enough to develop what was effectively a photographic memory and an IQ well above 200 whenever she lacked the knowledge to understand something. The only downside was the hefty chunk of mana it consumed, but it wasn't like she needed her magic for much else. Still, Luna decided she would only use those abilities when she was genuinely stuck, having to sit down, study, struggle with something, and finally understand it on her own was much more rewarding. Besides, she wanted to experience college properly. The entrance of Glasgow Kelvin College's Springburn campus was considerably busier than Luna had expected. Students were gathered in small groups around the entrance, some looking excited, others nervous, and a few already looking like they were wondering whether they could somehow turn around and go home without anyone noticing. Luna naturally belonged to the first group. "Look at all these people." She practically bounced through the entrance. Matteo followed several steps behind, carrying his bag with the expression of a man who had been sentenced to community service. "Luna," he called after her, "please remember that we are supposed to find the registration desk first."
"I know."
She immediately disappeared into the crowd. Matteo sighed. The first part of the welcome event was surprisingly ordinary. New students were directed toward their designated areas, where staff members checked names, answered questions, and helped them find their way around the campus. Luna received the basic information she needed, including where her classes would be held and how to access the college's student systems. A staff member explained the college's student information system, where students could check timetables, attendance, emails, learning materials, library services, support information, and other useful resources. Luna listened with a smile, bobbing her head. Matteo listened even more carefully, mostly because he had already decided that he had to be the responsible one. Soon enough, the students were gathered together and introduced to members of staff and their lecturers. "Welcome to Glasgow Kelvin College," one of the lecturers said with a smile. "Today is about getting you comfortable with the college, meeting the people you'll be studying with, and making sure you know where to go if you need help." Luna looked around at her new classmates. Some were chatting quietly, while a few looked nervous. One girl sitting nearby was filming herself live to her stream. This was actually exciting. Now she was finally getting to do something normal, or at least normal by human standards. After the introductions came a tour of the campus. They were shown the main facilities, learning spaces, library, and areas where students could get help with their studies or other problems. They were also told about the student association and the different clubs and activities available to them. Luna became increasingly interested. "There are clubs?" The student representative nodded. "Quite a few, and students can suggest new ones as well." Luna's eyes immediately lit up. The final part of the welcome event was the Freshers' Fair. Tables had been set up around the campus, covered with leaflets, information, club sign-up sheets, and various little giveaways. There were also games, competitions, refreshments, and plenty of students wandering around trying to figure out what they wanted to join. Luna was in heaven. She moved from table to table, asking questions, picking up information, and occasionally dragging Matteo along with her. He eventually ended up carrying several leaflets and a college-branded bag. "This is not what I expected," he muttered. "What did you expect?" 3 hours of listening to someone talk about rules. Luna grinned. "It's actually fun." She was genuinely happy. Matteo thought of Princess Joshua's dog and looked at Luna. He had the faintest smile as he imagined her as a white dog wagging its tail so hard it generated a gust.